Hey guys, Chip here. So I'm going to talk to you today about the difference between a program many of you may have heard of called Keyshot and the one I now use, which is Blender, and specifically the K-CyclesX version of Blender. Along the way, I'll be also showing off some very basic add-ons. The goal is to show how you could use Blender to create similar renders as Keyshot. And these are typically product or industrial design type renders. So first off, I'd like to mention that Keyshot is an absolutely incredible product. I purchased every version of it up until just a few years ago, and at that time it was by far the fastest renderer on the planet. And if what you're looking for is the absolute best still frame product rendering solution, and money is not an issue, then Keyshot is probably your best bet. They have absolutely a great set of materials, their own HDRI maps and custom HDRI generator, along with a very friendly and easy to use interface. Another primary benefit of Keyshot is they have many different translation add-ons and plugins available for different CAD and 3D modeling programs. So when I first started using Blender a number of years back, I tried to create a scene with a shadow catcher and reflection catcher, and I didn't get very good results. In fact, if I recall correctly, the reflection catcher, which is part of the shadow catcher, never did really work. But that's all changed now. The new Blender 3.0 now has a built-in shadow catcher that does a great job with reflections. It also can do some things like throw lighting onto the background picture in a scene, which is actually pretty cool. Not only is the new Blender 3.0 better with regard to the shadow catcher feature, it also has a significantly faster Cycles render engine. The new version is called CyclesX. Both CyclesX and Keyshot are photorealistic rendering engines, and both are very fast and take advantage of the new faster GPU cards that are available. So let's talk about a few advantages that Blender has. One of them is you can make edits to the mesh very easily. Another one is that you can actually create and edit UV maps for your mesh, which can be important as most CAD packages don't export with any sort of UV mapping. And Blender has superb volumetric effects, including smoke and fog. And if you use K-CyclesX, you'll also get even better denoising than the regular Blender 3.0 denoiser. Of course, cost can be a huge issue for many, and with Blender and K-CyclesX and a few add-ons, your monetary outlay will be significantly less of that of what you would spend on Keyshot. So we'll go over how you can use different asset management tools like KitOps to quickly tweak your model and apply materials. And of course, if you already own Keyshot, you can use those exact same HDRIs to light your Blender scene. Plus, there are a number of free and paid HDRIs available as well. One of the biggest pluses is the fact that Blender has a huge community, and with it comes tons of tutorials and tons of add-ons and other tools that makes things much easier. And not to mention, Blender's animation tools are significantly better as well. And it has a built-in compositing workflow that gives you a lot of flexibility in how your final render will look. And then there's K-CyclesX. K-CyclesX is a custom build of Blender that is focused on adding not only more speed to the CyclesX rendering system, but it also has some really good post effects that are shown directly in the viewport, which is not possible in Blender. With its superb speed and special effects, not to mention great support by the author himself, you'll find it can fit right in with your workflow. So let's take a look how we might use K-CyclesX and a few Blender add-ons to create a scene like one you might find in Keyshot. Okay, here we are in Blender 3.0. Actually, we're in the K-Cycles version of Blender 3.0. You can tell by the little K over here. And I've imported this object. Now, you can import a lot of different formats into Blender. You can use OBJ or STL or FBX. Typically, you'll probably use FBX or OBJ. There are actual importers and add-ons that you can get for Blender that can bring in stuff like STEP and other file formats. But for now, I'm going to assume that you already know how to get a file in here. And one thing I should mention is once you get in here, you might want to go to these normals and make sure that your geometry data is set to clear custom split normals. Right now we don't have any, so but if it looks kind of weird, you might want to do that. And the other thing is that, you know, of course, if you shade something flat, it's going to look like this, and you'll see that. And so what you'll want to do is shade smooth and go over here and make sure this auto smooth is turned on. If you don't, you might get some artifact. I set it each to 35 degrees. Now, we're going to look at how we apply materials to this object. So here's a picture of the object that we're going to be rendering today. I'm not going to render this particular image. This is actually a photograph from their website. Okay, so now we're back into Blender. So a couple things we want to do is, one, let's talk about these icons up here. This first one right here is just X-ray, so you can see inside of things. Okay, we turn that off. Second one is our wireframe. You can see what's going on there. This is the solid view, and if I look in this settings, I can actually turn on wireframe if I want to see that, and I'll turn that back off. This is what's called EEVEE, and EEVEE is a really fast, almost a game type renderer. So you can do near photorealistic renderings in EEVEE, and this is K-CyclesX or CyclesX. And this is pretty much the same thing as you would see in Keyshot. It renders incredibly fast. I'm on a 3090, RTX 3090, in case anyone's wondering. So I've got this set up. I've got it set up with a clay material. And if we look at this material, you see it's just set up with two different nodes. This is the principal Blender BSDF node, which is every material has just about. And this is an ambient occlusion. I just added an ambient occlusion to the base, so I turn it off. See, it doesn't have much ambient occlusion, so I just add that there, and I'm just using that just to be able to see the model. So now what I'm going to do is I want to go ahead and start adding some materials to this model, and to do that I'm going to use a product called KitOps, and there's two versions. There's KitOps Free and KitOps Pro, and you can use KitOps Free for this. In fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'll be using a lot of the KitOps Free stuff in here. So let's click this this body object, and actually this is we'll go to CW Plastic plus Paint. Now this is a K-Pack, so you can get these K-Packs online. This is from the EEVEE material system. I'll put a link in the description, but it's got a lot of really good, especially industrial design kind of materials in it, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I'm going to go ahead and hit this and say add material to this surface. So okay, so there it is. It comes in here. Now I'm going to move it up, and I'm going to go into the EEVEE mode so I can see it a little faster. And with it set right here, I will go in and just this little color, I'm going to just change it, turn the saturation all the way down, and let's move it, kind of almost all the way to white, something right about there. So that's really good. Okay, and then that's pretty cool. So now we have our white object, and if I go back into this mode, you'll see what it looks like. And then I'm going to come into here, and I'm going to look for some of these metals. So I'll go CW metal. This is also part of the EEVEE materials system. So we'll grab this chrome shiny, and I can basically select, let's select that object and say add material. And you can see it puts a chrome shiny material on there. I'll grab this little grid, add material to that. So I'm gonna just go around and add this chrome shiny. And I can also, actually, there might be I might also want to use a steel. Like for instance, this handle might be steel and not chrome. See, it's going to have a little bit of a different look to it. It's got a little brushed area on it, and up here this might be chrome. And if I want to, I can just basically go in here and click on my materials, and you'll see I'll have my chrome right there. I can just add them that way too. So I can just go in here at any time, and let's grab this, and I'm going to make him a plastic. So I'm going to go back into the CW Plastic plus Paint, and I'm going to grab something kind of like this plastic dapple and say add material to that. And that's going to put, if we zoom up all the way on this, you'll see that puts kind of a Moltec texture. It's a little too big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my EEVEE so I can see it a little better. There it is, and I can just pull this up, and I'll look at that material. And here's the scale. So if I just set this instead of 2, let's make it 10. You see that makes it a lot smaller, so that may be more like what we want there. And then this is one of the free, and one of the best glasses is actually in a free K-Pack, which are called the KO Specials. And in here, this special mat has the very first one is this glass, and I'll add that material to here, and that'll set the glass in there. And then if I come over here, I can hit the period key on my numPad, and I'm going to find that one that's right there. So I'm going to just hide that. And then this right here is going to be some kind of coffee. So I think I'll just go over here again to my free materials and say this plastic paint. Let's just grab that. And let's grab something that like a dark matte, and we'll add that material so it's kind of a dark color. There it is. So, and then if we go back into our cycles, you'll see that it's starting to work pretty well. I'm going to put a link to this file in the actual description of the video, so you can actually take this file apart. I'm not going to be able to put in the commercial materials, but I'll leave in the free ones, and you can see how that works. I'll also leave in this custom HDRI map that I have that I'll talk about here in just a little bit. So I'm going to go grab this guy right here, and I'm going to make him that plastic dapple right there. And let's go over here, and this is a wood. Let's grab this shiny wood, add material to that, add that material there too. That's going to be the plastic dapple. So we'll go add that material there. Another way that I can do is I can basically select everything. Like I know that I want that to be white. And this, I select this one last. And when I do that, I can just say copy materials to selected. So that's kind of a nice quick thing. Like for instance, I know I want this to be kind of a chrome and that to be a chrome. and this to be a chrome, and that to be a chrome, and then click that one last and go over here and say copy material selected. So that gets all those to chrome also, so you can see what's going on. Okay, and then we'll come up here, and I think we'll make that wood material. No, let's make that a rubber. So I'll go and grab other leather rubber. Let's just do that. We'll add a dark rubber on there. That works pretty good. And then you can see that we have these little divots, and these are probably chrome. So I just go in here and say chrome shiny. That gets those. And lastly, let's kind of zoom in here, see if we have some other stuff here. Let's click this, hit the period button on the numpad to zoom all the way in there. So that's what I did. Let's grab this, and that I know is going to be chrome. And here's another free set of colors, which are these emissive colors. So let's drag this little dot, and that we're going to make him green. There. And then I have one up here, same thing. I hit the period button, and we'll click this, add material, and this we'll go ahead and add chrome. And there we go. So now we've really done a pretty good job of texturing. Now the other thing I want to do is I want to add a couple screws in here because I didn't put those in there. So I'm going to select this object, and I'll go into one of my K-packs, and this is again using KitOps, and using the KitOps free version. I'll grab this little screw right here, and I'll add the insert. And with this selected, when I add it and I drag it over here, it's going to actually position it wherever I want to. And I can just, click and then just drop it in there, and I'll punch a hole in it first. So that's kind of cool. It actually put a hole directly in there and a little radius around there. Go back into EEVEE mode, and let's click on this, which is going to make me in the orthographic mode. And if I hold the Alt key down, it's going to snap to different places. So I'm going to snap to right here. And with this, I can actually just go into the scale button and just move it down just a little bit. And then I can Shift D, which is the same as duplicate. So Shift D, and let's move that right over to here. Let's move it somewhere like this. So, and with that being selected, I'm going to take that and I'm going to go over here and just hit this mirror on the X. And we'll see it puts it over there, and click on this one and mirror that on the X also, and it puts it over there. So that's just some of the KitOps stuff that you can do. And you can, with KitOps Pro, you can create your own inserts and do all kinds of stuff. So next thing I want to do is I'm going to put a decal on the side of this. And so I'm going to go into one of the K-packs that I have that has some decals on it. And here's this logo, and I can just add that insert right on it. I'll add this insert right here. And now notice it's coming in at an angle. And so what I might want to do is I can scroll the mouse wheel, and when I do that, it just changes the size. But if I hold the Alt key down, it's going to actually change the actual angle as well. So I can come in here like this, and let's go ahead and scroll it down a little bit and make it kind of tiny. And we'll just stop it right there. And I can go like this, and we'll select the object again that we want to insert it on, add the insert, and we'll do the same thing. Scroll it around and drop it in here. And then this and this are going to be the same material, which is shiny wood. So we'll go copy material select. Now, one of the things you might notice is that we have this object, which is completely wooden. The whole thing is, and we know that this is all going to be chrome here. So how do we fix that? Well, we can tab into this object, and that means that we've got to go in here and just click off of it. And I just want to select like, these. This is selecting a vertice. This is selecting an edge. And this is selection of face. So I'm going to hold the Alt key down and kind of select this. I'll get that whole loop, and then Control plus, or I can go under select more or less, so I can go more. So Control numpad, so I can go Control plus, 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 plus. So I'm right about there, plus, and I think, yeah. So I'll go Control plus, 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 plus. I want to get all that wooden. So that's the wood right there. So I've got that set, so I'm going to select the inverse of that, right? So select invert, so I have the rest of that. And I'll go over here, and this is my materials, my shiny wood. I'm going to add a slot. Just hit plus, and I will, in that slot, I'm going to put the chrome, and I'm going to assign it. Hit the assign button. Now I assigned it to that. I'll tab out of that. You'll see we just fixed this so that we have the chrome in here and there. Let's just go back into this view. We can see it a little better in there. So that worked really well. And we need to do the same over here. We'll grab this, and that's going to be chrome. shiny. We can just grab all of these and select that one last. And remember, we just say copy material to select it, and they're all there. Okay, so now that this is done, we need to set up our render. So that's what we'll do next. Okay, before we get onto rendering, I just want to show you one more thing about Blender and how it renders materials. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Kit Ops, and I'm going to add a insert on top of this object. So I'll hit add insert, scale it up a little bit, something like maybe like this, and move it forward. That red color you see is that I have showing back faces, so I don't want to. I'm going to turn the face orientation off, and then you can see what we have here. Now we have this object, so we just added this little cutter, special cutter. Now, if you notice, I'm going to hide these things. You can see that, and there's no bevels on this anywhere. So let's go back to EEVEE, and I'm going to go into here, and I will just delete this material. So I'll hit this button, select this, delete it. Now, after I've deleted, I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to zoom up on it, and let's just make this metallic. So 1 in the metallic, and 0 in the roughness. So it's very shiny metallic, and you can see how that looks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the thing that Keyshot does, and that is I'm going to add a bevel to this. I'll go add input bevel, and I'll just drag it down here. And now where does the bevel go? Well, it's going to go with the normal. So I'm going to, let's just move this up. You can see what's going on here. Here's the bevel. So I just hooked that directly up to the normal, and I want samples to be 16. And now I'm going to move it back down. And let's look at this. Now we don't see any bevel here because we're in EEVEE mode, but let's go over into cycles mode and we can take a look. And you can see how big that bevel is. It's too big, actually, 0.005. Let's try that. Or maybe 0.01. There we go. So you can start to see how that bevel works. Let's go ahead and adjust the roughness just a little bit so we can get a little more. And if I click this button here, I'd turn off all those overlays so you can see what it looks like. This will render in cycles, and it won't render in EEVEE, but it looks pretty darn good. Okay, let's talk about rendering now. So here's our object. We're looking at an EEVEE, and it looks pretty good. And by the way, I went ahead and kind of added the rubber and some chrome to the back areas right here. Adjusted the color just a little bit. And if we go into here, we will see that we have under object something called whirl. And I've set this world up in a way so that you can see the HDRI. And so when we go in here, you can see that there's the HDRI. That's in the cycles. We go back to EEVEE, you won't see it, but that's because we have this standard viewport shading that we can choose any one of these HDRIs, but I'm going to use the scene lights and the scene world. So now this is EEVEE, and this is what we're seeing. So we're seeing pretty much the same things we would in cycles. It's just not quite as nice. So what I want to do is I want to show you this little trick here. I'm going to take this mix shader, and as you can tell, right now we have, this is the HDRI, this is the image that we're using, this 3 panels straight, that's the image. This is how we rotate the image. Right there, you can see it rotating. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook this up, and this is going to basically say keep the same lighting from this HDRI, but use a background. And you can use any color background you want too. So let's just move the background to something like this. That looks good. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and rotate this, and I'll rotate it around to where I like the actual way that the colors work. Now if I want to add another HDRI, I can come in here and I can just hit the X button, say open, and I have an HDRI folder, and you can click the thumbnails, and you can just, you can go through and add anything you want. This is the one I just was using. If you go to HDRI Heavy, they've got a ton of really, really nice HDRIs that are worth looking at as well. So maybe I'll grab this one right here, and then I can again rotate that around so to get what I want. So I might go for something like that, and then I'll check it in EEVEE, see what it looks like. And that looks pretty good. I like that. So we're going to leave that the way it is. Then I'll go over, select my camera, and under View, under Cameras, I'm going to say Active Camera, which is numpad 0. And that shows me what the framing looks like for this. And then under this view, let's go under View here. I want to make sure this camera to view is selected. If it's not selected, anytime I move it out, I'm going to lose that camera. So I'll hit the numpad 0 again. I'm going to click camera view, select my object, and now I can move it around inside this view. Once that's done, I'm going to just lock it down, and by clicking this button right here. Then I'll go into this object, and this is the floor, and I'm going to basically select the object, and remember it was clay. I'm going to turn that off, and I'm going to create a new one, and this I'm going to just call Shadow Catcher. And I think I'm just going to turn that one. We're just going to turn the roughness down to something like there, something like that. So it's kind of got a little bit of reflection in it. Maybe I'll adjust the color just a little bit too. Maybe move the color down about something like this. Okay, and that's good. So that's a shadow catcher. Now I'll go over here to this tab right here and scroll down, and under visibility, I'm going to say make that a shadow catcher. And you can see that instantly creates a shadow catcher right there. So ideally this base color right here should probably be pretty much the same as whatever the background color is going to be. So if I adjust this, I can just hover over this and say Control C like copy, and I can go back into world, and I can come back over here and Control V paste, and so I get the get the same. So there's my shadow catcher for this particular. I'm going to turn off this now. So that turns off the HDRI. So let's go ahead and add some area lights. So I'm going to go in here and turn all of these on, and now I have this empty, and here's the empty. And if I rotate this, you'll see that I've got this Z, and I'm going to rotate it this way. And again, I'm going to go back into here so I can see it a little better. And I want to rotate my lights in a way that is going to look best on this model, like that. And once I get them done, then I'm going to adjust 0.4, something like that. And we'll come back, and I can adjust the lights by just simply coming in here and looking at a light. In the light, that's 1,000 watts, so I might make it 750, and the same with this one, 750 watts. So you see what's going on. Let's go back into my Cycles view, and you'll see what we have here, and that looks pretty good. I don't have as much contrast as I might like. So now I can come back into Cycles and go all the way to the bottom, and we have this thing called color management, and we can use this filmic, and we can make it very high contrast or medium contrast. I'm going to make it high contrast, and I'm going to adjust this down a little bit so I can get a little bit. I can get the reflection, but I don't get too much of the lighting. And I'm going to take that empty again. I'm going to rotate him around just a little more, see if there's anything else that, yeah, that might be a little better. Get a little more contrast in there. So we'll do it like that. Now that we're done here, let's go into our K-Cycles part. Now this is the cool part, right? This is the part where we're going to add effects to the scene. I'll click this to turn this off, and I'm going to basically go in and say, we can turn on our ultra denoiser, and then under Post FX right here, I'll turn on Bloom, and Bloom's going to punch out some of these highlights. And the way I can check that out is I'll click on here, and I'm going to take the blend and move it all the way to 1. Okay, and then I'm going to take the intensity and move it up, and you can start to see when I do that, how much bloom we're adding. And then take the blend, and I'll go down to 0.5 again. And now we've added a nice little bloom over here and over here. And so I'll leave that alone. Then I'm going to go into tone mapping. Now, when I start doing tone mapping, it's going to affect this shadow catcher, but it won't affect the final rendering. But I'm going to just adjust the exposure just a little bit so I get a little more and a little more contrast. So I'm starting to get just, I can just start playing around with this. Now, this is not available in Blender. None of the stuff that I'm doing here is available in Blender. This is why I use K-Cycles for this, right? I can't use it doesn't have the bloom stuff and this contrasting. Now, you can do it in the compositing tab after the render, but it's much easier if you can do it up front also. And things like this bloom is a really good bloom compared to what you get in Blender. So I'm going to take this white balance, I'm going to jack it down just a little bit so it's a little cooler. And I can blur the image if I like, or sharpen the image if I want. But for the most part, I'm not going to mess with that. I can also go in and add depth of field if I want. And then what I'll do is under lens, so I'm going to go ahead and add this vignette. So I'm going to put it to 1 and then make the intensity 1. And notice how the vignette's taking over the whole viewport, which I don't want. So I'll come back over here and I'll hit this render region. And now the vignette kind of comes in here, and that's a little too dark for me. So I'm going to go back in here and just say, okay, the vignette intensity, I'm going to just bring it down. Something like that there. Okay, and then let's look at my sampling. I've got it at 128, so let's do 256. And I'm going to go ahead and power save this, save an iteration of this. So this is my render. I'm going to put some text over here, but this is going to be my render. If I hit F12 now, or I just say render image, it's going to do a rendering for me, and it's a 1920 by 1080 render. And you can see it took 13 seconds. Let's go ahead and, just for the heck of it, I'll close this. Let's, instead of making it 1920 by 20. Let's make it a 4K render. So let's multiply it by 200%. See how long it takes to render this in 4K. So I'll hit F12 again, and that was what, 52 seconds. And we can see if I hit the 1 key, that's the actual resolutions. So I went back to the original HDRI map because I found out that the one I was using was giving me some artifacting in this glass area up here. And as you can see, the object looks really good. I did adjust the lighting a little more, rotated them a little more. And as you can see, the image is pretty good. And as I said, the 4K was still rendered in under a minute with 256 samples and ultra denoising turned on. It all looks really good. So one thing I will mention is that there's also a way that you can use a background image in here, and there's also a way that you can set up a scene like a tabletop scene or use the regular HDRI. Those are options that you do have. It's just we don't have time for all of that in this particular presentation. If you're interested in this, I would definitely suggest you take a look at K-Cycles, as it really does speed up things and it helps you with a lot of this post effect stuff. And then of course KitOps can help you in terms of adding materials along with EEVEE material system. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you online. Bye.